The air outside Windsor was heavy with silence, yet inside the palace walls a storm of emotion was about to break. Cameras clicked, reporters leaned forward, and millions around the world held their breath. Then came the moment no one was ready for. King Charles and Prince William stepping forward together, their faces grave, their voices unsteady. The devastating truth about Princess Catherine's health was finally spoken aloud. Crowds wept openly, some in disbelief, others in quiet prayer. And yet, behind the sorrow, there was something else. An extraordinary story of resilience, love, and a royal family determined to walk through the fire together. If this story moves you as much as it has touched us, take a moment to support the channel. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who believes in the strength of family and the courage to face the hardest battles. Your support helps us keep bringing powerful, human stories like this one straight to you. The autumn wind whispered across the grounds of Windsor Castle, rustling the golden leaves as if nature itself sensed a quiet unease. Behind the palace's dignified walls, Princess Catherine, usually radiant and composed, sat in her favorite garden chair. To the public, she was the picture of grace and stability. But in private, something far more troubling was unfolding. For weeks, Catherine had been battling a deep, unshakable exhaustion. At first, she brushed it off as the toll of endless engagements, motherhood, and the relentless pace of royal duty. After all, raising 3 young children while also serving as the Princess of Wales was no small task. But this was different. The fatigue clung to her, pulling her down day by day. Headaches, dizzy spells, and moments of weakness crept in quietly, growing too strong to ignore. William noticed it first. Not through grand gestures, but through the tiny, telling details that only a devoted husband could see. The way she would pause halfway up the staircase, catching her breath. The way her smile, still kind, no longer reached her eyes. The way she slipped away earlier each night, retreating to bed before the children had even settled their toys. He worried. Intensely. The man who had once lost his mother too soon could not shake the fear of history repeating itself. William began quietly asking questions, urging Catherine to see the royal family's physician, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Soon, private visits became routine. Blood tests were carried out discreetly, samples sent under guarded protocols. The palace staff, trained in discretion, began to whisper among themselves. Something wasn't right. Dr. Mitchell's concern grew with each result. The usual explanations, stress, exhaustion, the demands of royal life, no longer fit the picture. Her pale complexion, the weight she seemed to be losing, even the shine of her once thick hair, all pointed to something deeper. William grew more insistent, his protective instincts sharpened by memory and fear. He stood by Catherine's side through long consultations, determined not to let her walk this path alone. Around the family dinner table, King Charles too had begun to notice. Despite his own recent health struggles, his attention never wavered from his daughter-in-law. To Charles, Catherine was not just the future queen. She was a beloved member of the family, a source of light in his son's life. He watched her push food around her plate, offering smiles as though nothing were wrong, and his heart ached. Queen Camilla, ever perceptive, suggested retreats and restful weekends. But even in the serenity of Balmoral, the symptoms followed Catherine like an uninvited shadow. Behind closed doors, the Middleton family noticed it too. Carol, her mother, with that instinct only mothers have, gently asked if Catherine was truly well. Her father, Michael, offered to take the children more often, hoping rest might ease his daughter's hidden burden. Catherine, ever determined not to cause worry, simply reassured them all with that familiar warmth, though everyone closest to her could see the cost it was taking. Still, she pressed on with public duties. At school events, she smiled for other parents. At hospitals, she lifted spirits of patients who lit up at her presence. At charity gatherings, she leaned into her role with sincerity. Yet those around her noticed the subtle moments, how she leaned on William's arm for support, how her stride had slowed, how she gripped a chair when no one else was looking. The turning point came after a series of comprehensive tests at a private London facility. The waiting was agony. Catherine would sit quietly in the gardens, watching George, Charlotte, and Louis chase each other across the grass, her heart aching with both love and fear. What future was she stepping into? What story would she have to tell her children? When the results finally came, the news struck like a thunderclap. Catherine had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition, not terminal, but serious, demanding long treatment and a dramatic shift in her life. The room fell into silence as Dr. Mitchell explained the reality. Medications, therapies, rest, a long road ahead. William gripped Catherine's hand tightly, his love steady but his eyes betraying the fear he felt. Catherine listened, her mind spinning, but even then her first thoughts were not of herself, but of her children, her charities, the people who looked up to her. King Charles wept when he heard. Queen Camilla offered unwavering support. Her parents vowed to carry whatever load they could, but the hardest challenge still lay ahead: how to tell the children, how to shield them from fear while teaching them about courage. Behind palace walls, a battle was unfolding, not one of politics or duty, but one of love, resilience, and sheer human strength. And though the world had not yet heard the truth, whispers were growing. Soon the royal family would have no choice but to step forward and share the devastating news. The day of the announcement began like any other, but everyone who gathered outside Kensington Palace knew something extraordinary was about to unfold. The press had been summoned. The palace gates, usually a backdrop of tradition and ceremony, now carried an air of solemn expectation. Crowds clutched flowers, some whispered prayers, while others simply waited in stunned silence. At precisely 10 o'clock, a written statement was released. For the first time, the truth was clear. Princess Catherine had been diagnosed with a serious autoimmune condition. The news landed like a shockwave. Phones buzzed, news anchors interrupted broadcasts, and across Britain and beyond, hearts sank. Minutes later, a video message was shared. Filmed in her favorite garden, the same place where she had once sought quiet refuge, Catherine appeared before the camera. She looked thinner, yes, but her voice carried the familiar warmth and steadiness that people cherished. She thanked the public for their concern, admitted the journey ahead would be long, and spoke honestly about her need to step back from royal duties to focus on her health. It wasn't just an update. It was a moment of raw humanity from a woman so often placed on a pedestal. Around the world, the reaction was immediate. Within hours, hashtags of support flooded social media. Flowers were delivered by the thousands to palace gates. Charities connected to Catherine reported surges in donations and volunteer sign-ups. For once, the conversation wasn't about protocol, titles, or ceremonies. It was about empathy, compassion, and the universal experience of facing illness with courage. King Charles, deeply moved, stepped forward with William soon after. Together, they addressed the nation. Charles, his voice carrying the weight of both king and father-in-law, spoke of admiration for Catherine's strength. William, more personal and emotional, thanked the nation for its support, admitting candidly that watching his wife suffer had been one of the greatest trials of his life. It was a rare glimpse into the man behind the prince, a husband and father, determined to protect the heart of his family. The crowds wept openly. Strangers embraced. Some remembered Princess Diana, drawing quiet parallels between her struggles in the spotlight and Catherine's moment of vulnerability. Others simply felt connected, for if even a princess could fall ill, then every family's quiet battles carried more weight and dignity. But beyond the grief, something remarkable happened. Catherine's openness began to change lives. Letters arrived at the palace by the thousands, many from people with autoimmune conditions themselves. They spoke of drawing courage from her story, of finally feeling seen, of finding the strength to tell their own families about their struggles. For Catherine, this was more than survival. It became service in its purest form. Weeks passed and the royal family adjusted. Camilla, Princess Anne, and the Wessexes stepped into additional duties. Charles lent his wisdom, reminding Catherine that health must come before duty. The Middletons surrounded her with family warmth, and William, balancing his royal role and fatherhood, became her fiercest protector, ensuring she never faced a single step of the journey alone. By spring, Catherine made her first tentative return to public life. A private visit to a children's hospital, nervous, fragile, yet smiling as she greeted young patients, many of them fighting conditions similar to her own. One little girl asked softly, Are you feeling better now, Princess? Catherine's eyes welled with tears. In that child she saw herself, vulnerable but hopeful. It was a moment that reminded her, and the world, that her journey was no longer just about endurance but about inspiration. The media, for once, handled her story with dignity. There were still critics, still gossip, but they were drowned out by a tide of respect. Catherine's authenticity, her willingness to let the world see her vulnerability, had deepened the bond between the monarchy and the people. And so, as months rolled forward, a new chapter began. Catherine was no longer only the poised princess waving from palace balconies. She was something more. A woman who had faced fear, fought through uncertainty, and chosen honesty over silence. And that, perhaps, is what makes this story so profoundly moving. Princess Catherine's journey reminds us that no title, no crown, no tradition can shield us from life's hardest battles. But it also shows us that courage is not about standing tall when things are easy. It's about standing at all when life tries to bring you to your knees. The sight of Charles and William by her side, and the sound of crowds weeping not just for a princess, but for a woman they feel they truly know. These moments will be remembered for years to come. If Catherine's story has touched you, let it be a reminder. Resilience grows in the quietest gardens. Love is the greatest protector, and sometimes, the bravest act is simply telling the truth. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never underestimate the power of family.